Once upon a time, in the heart of the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, tales of a mysterious creature circulated among the local Native American tribes. This creature, known to many by different names, was most commonly referred to as Sasquatch. The Sasquatch was a giant hairy being that roamed the forests and mountains, and it was deeply embedded in the lore of various tribes. The stories went back hundreds of years. The Tule River Indian Reservation has ancient pictographs that depict a large, hairy man. The native people believed that seeing Sasquatch was a terrible omen, indicating that someone in the community was about to pass over to the other side. During funerals, women would sing special songs to prevent the hairy man from taking the soul of the deceased. In the Yosemite area, the Miwok Indians spoke of Sasquatch as a boogeyman figure who would snatch children and eat them. This terrifying belief was shared by several other tribes. Along the coast of British Columbia, another name for the creature was Zunukwa, meaning the wild woman of the woods. She was depicted on totem poles, and it was said that if you heard whistling at night, you should never go outside, for it was the Sasquatch trying to lure you into the woods where you would disappear forever. One of the first documented stories involving a white person and this creature was from 1836. A woman named Rachel Plummer was captured by a Comanche raiding party in Texas. After being freed 2 years later, she published an account of her captivity. Among the many tales, she described a creature the Comanche called the man-tiger, which looked like a giant man and walked upright, standing about 8 or 9 feet tall. In another tale, a group of Wenatchee Indians in the Cascade Mountains followed a Sasquatch into a large ravine filled with unusual trees and dense scrub brush. They watched the ravine from a hillside, hoping to see the creature emerge. When it didn't, some ventured down to investigate while others kept watch from above. Despite searching thoroughly, they found no trace of the Sasquatch. They believed the creature had transformed into one of the trees. From that day on, they dared not chop any tree in that ravine, fearing the wrath of the Sasquatch. In the late 1800s to early 1900s, at a remote fishing camp near the Sandpool River, there existed a small, tight-knit community. The men would spend their days fishing, bringing back their catch in the evening for the women to prepare. As usual, one evening the men returned after a long day on the river. The women, including a newlywed bride known for her gentle demeanor and recent marriage, set to work on drying racks, while others started dinner preparations over the fire. This particular evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the young bride picked up a kettle and quietly left the group to fetch water from a nearby stream. Moments after her departure, a piercing scream cut through the air, sending the whole camp into a state of alarm. The men grabbed their weapons and rushed towards the sound. To their horror, they found the young bride being carried off by a massive, hairy creature, what the elders had long whispered about in hushed tones, a Sasquatch. His strides were long and purposeful, his back hunched slightly as he moved quickly deeper into the forest. The small tribe stood frozen, fear and disbelief paralyzing them. They knew attacking the creature could provoke its vengeance, endangering the entire community. As they debated what to do, the men noticed small pieces of cloth on the ground, each one torn from the bride's dress, a desperate trail she left behind. The tribe decided the safest option was to follow the trail discreetly. Days turned into weeks, with no sign of the young woman, but their determination never wavered. They scurried through the dense forest, avoiding danger, fueled by the hope that they might find her alive. Summer rolled into fall. One day, as they ventured deep into the woods, they stumbled upon a clearing. There she was, the bride, on her hands and knees, digging up wild potato roots. She had noticed them before they saw her, and, with a skill honed by desperation, she crept towards them, casting away her gathered roots and signaling her rescue. The Sasquatch, asleep nearby, did not notice as she skillfully made her way to the men. One of them leaped off his horse, offering her his hand. Without a word, she mounted the horse, wrapping her arms tightly around the rider's waist, and they quietly slipped away into the forest. Upon returning to camp, the community didn't take chances. They packed up in haste and moved far from the Sandpool River, settling in a new area where they hoped to find peace. The story spirals into the unusual. During her months in captivity, the woman had become pregnant. She later gave birth to a son who grew up on the reservation. He was different from the other children. His arms were unusually long, almost reaching his knees, though he stood only 5'4". His sloping forehead and large lower jaw, wide mouth, straight upper and lower lips, combined with his straight, protruding teeth, gave him a distinctive appearance. His large hands and long fingers added to his unique, almost alien look. Despite a slight hunchback and elongated ears, he was known to be remarkably intelligent. This young man attended school, and later in life, he operated a ranch. He was known in the community as kind and respectful, contradicting the harsh appearance he had inherited. He married and had children, his legacy living on even after his premature death at around 30 years old. He was buried on the reservation, remembered by the community not for his appearance, but for his gentle nature and intelligence. Years later, another strange tale surfaced. An elderly Wenatchee woman recounted a fall hunting trip near Wenatchee Lake. One of the men, having separated from his party, was captured by a Sasquatch and taken far into the Rocky Mountains. Through the winter, he was held captive by a Sasquatch family. He described the cave as having an unbearable stench, and life within it as bizarre, but not hostile. He was kept safe, if not completely welcome, and forbidden to engage in hunts, kept mostly with the female Sasquatch. When spring arrived, the Sasquatch family returned him to the place of his capture. His return to camp was met with the astonished faces of his children, who had thought him lost to the wilderness. Despite his bizarre captivity, he recounted being treated decently by the Sasquatch family. These stories, while perhaps embellished over generations, remain a fascinating part of the local lore, blending mystery, fear, and the extraordinary into the fabric of the community's history. Another intriguing encounter was shared by an Anglo woman who had settled on a Native American reservation in 1984. She recounted a memorable event involving her and her mother-in-law, who was an elder of the community. One warm summer day, they had been out foraging and had discovered a bountiful patch of kama's roots. Kama's roots were a treasured and nutritious food source, so they carefully harvested a large quantity and decided to store them in a safe place until they could be properly prepared for drying. To keep the kama's roots safe from animals, they placed them on the roof of their trailer, which sat beside the serene Nespelem Creek. That night, after sharing stories around the fire and enjoying the peaceful sounds of the creek, they retired to the trailer to sleep. In the middle of the night, her mother-in-law was awakened by strange noises coming from the roof. Being a seasoned resident of the area, she recognized the sounds as something unusual. It wasn't the scurrying of common nocturnal animals like raccoons or squirrels. It was something much heavier and more deliberate. She listened intently, and as the noises continued, she began to suspect that it might be a Sasquatch, a creature deeply rooted in the legends and oral history of the local tribes. The following morning, they cautiously climbed up to the roof to investigate. To their astonishment, they found that the kama's roots were gone. In their place, there was a soft spot where it seemed something heavy had rested, and remarkably, their small puppy had been placed gently on the roof. The puppy was unharmed and seemed a bit confused, but otherwise perfectly fine. They couldn't help but wonder if the Sasquatch had a sense of humor or was simply playing with them. The thought of this massive creature gently lifting their puppy onto the roof was both eerie and oddly endearing. The story quickly spread through the community, and many elders nodded knowingly, adding it to the growing collection of Sasquatch tales. Other accounts from the area told of mysterious lights seen moving along the base of a nearby mountain at night, and sightings of a group of Sasquatches traveling together along Keller Butte. The local Indians had long warned others to stay out of the mountains after dark, believing that the night belonged to these elusive beings. Over the years, numerous stories surfaced about hidden Sasquatch caves high up on Moses Mountain, and of salmon being stolen from campsites. These tales, often passed down through generations, had a way of captivating listeners and sustaining a deep respect and curiosity for the mysterious inhabitants of the wilderness.